I don't know how in the world this movie got greenlit. I just, some of the scenes that I saw in this movie is just incredible. I know that there had to be executives watching this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And did they just say, okay, let's go with it? Or they said, like, Ryan, we believe in your vision. You made a movie that made $1 billion. We trust in your story. Go ahead and make the movie you want to make.
Mm-hmm.
Or did they just not see it at all and say, hey, just go ahead and just do your thing? How did you get away with a movie? What do you think?
I think when you see the movie, like, it's just, truth is truth. And so he did such a great job of just certain things just irrefutable. And I know we're going to talk about that, throughout our conversation. But I just think it is just a well told, well presented, well acted story. And the amazing thing is that as even a storyteller, one of the things he did really well was he told the story in the course of a day, like sunset, well, day into evening into sunrise. That in of itself is a challenging feat to tell a really complex, multi-layered historical story in the midst of that span of time. And he did an impeccable job with it. And I think, for things I know we'll discuss that also were just incredibly done in that movie, I think that it deservingly so should have been greenlit.
Since it's been on digital, I've seen it twice. And every time I see it, I get something different out of it.
I know, I've been taking notes.
Let's get into this. So the opening scene is, we see Sammy driving in a car. And this is, in Mississippi. This is, you can tell by the setting. This is back in the olden days. He pulls up to a church and he walks in and he's bloody.
Yes.
All bloody. He walks into the church and people are surprised to see him. And his father is the pastor of the church. And his father is telling him to commit to God, take away the sins, just move away from the sins that you're committing, drop that guitar that you have. Now the guitar, he doesn't have the complete guitar. He just has the, part of it, part of the guitar, the strings. So his father is trying to get him to repent, drop the guitar. And then we cut to one day earlier. And it takes place in Clarksdale, Mississippi, October 16th, 1932. I don't know if there's any particular reason for that date. So the day before, we see beautiful cinematography of the South, right? The cotton fields. And we see Sammy going through, talking to his mom, and, he's about to get ready to meet up with his cousins. How do you feel about the opening of the movie, like the cinematography? What do you think?
The visuals were like really serene, but because we know what's going to happen, you're just like, oh my gosh, well, what's going to happen to disrupt this serenity, if you will. But the other piece, if I can even jump back a little bit to how it opens up with that, the setup around, I wrote it down, so that's why you can just read it. It says, there are legends of people born with a gift of making music so true it can pierce the veil between life and death, conjuring spirits from the past and the future. In ancient Ireland, they were called Fili. In Choctaw land, they call them firekeepers. And in West Africa, they're called griots. This gift can bring healing to the communities, but it can also attract evil. And having that, like kind of like that monologue, and then you're seeing Sammy drive, and you're seeing Sammy. This is something I didn't pick up on until the second time watching the movie. He's driving in his car to the church, and I didn't pick up on whose car it was until seeing it the second time when we had the opening with Smoke and Stack, and then you see the car, and I'm like, oh, we already got a hint about something's going to happen where Sammy's driving back in this car and Smoke and Stack aren't. So the first time I was just kind of lulled by the visuals, the aesthetics, the serenity, and having family like from South Carolina, like that just brought me back in time to like my days when I would go visit my grandparents in Charleston. But then in light of the story, it was just like, well, what's going to happen, what's going to come, you know? And can I throw in one more kind of like tidbit? When Sammy is in the church and he enters and he talks and he's approaching his father, and I knew that the father was Saul Williams, and Saul Williams is a spoken word artist, that it was just like, oh, this is, if he's involved in this film is going to be rich with poetic language and metaphor and history. So kind of, for me, I was anticipating what's going to transpire just by seeing him in the opening scene. And the broken guitar, that scene where it then, clicks to a day early, just made me wonder, like, when his father kept saying, drop the guitar, and he didn't, then it made me think, well, what is he holding? What is he holding on to physically? And what is he holding on to metaphorically? And why? Because clearly him still holding on to that guitar in the midst of his battle scars, if you will, was like, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
Him holding guitar and all bloody.
Yeah.
Walking in with bloody clothes.
Driving with somebody else's car.
What did he go through?
Yes.
So we'll find out. So now it's one day earlier, and Sammy is meeting up with his cousins, twin cousins, named Smoke and Stack. Let's talk about Michael B. Jordan.
Oh, my
This
goodness,
must
yes.
be, in my opinion, you let me know, I think his best performance. In anything he's done, television, movies, I think he really, really shined in this film. And it got to a point where I know that he's playing twins, but you kind of forget that, he is playing two different roles.
Yes.
It's as if there are actual twins playing these roles, not one actor playing
Agreed.
both. It's very interesting, but you could tell that he took particular time to make sure that you could distinguish between the two. Like as far as the clothes they wear, like Smoke wore the cap and Stack wore the hat. Even the inflection of his voice.
Yes.
Like Smoke had more of a gruff voice. Stack was a little, higher pitched.
A little slick.
Yeah, a little slick. Right, that's pretty good. Yeah, a little slick. And, Smoke is a businessman. Negotiator through and through. You can see that throughout the movie. Slick is more, Stack is more fun lunch. Let's just, have fun. And he's that type of person. Right? So what else do you want to say about Jordan's performance?
I was so impressed with Michael B. Jordan as one. I can go back to even with The Wire and him being one of the hoppers in terms of like the trajectory of his career. But there was something, it wasn't even just charismatic. It was like just the way in which he embodied both characters, both twins, and giving them distinct attributes. But then at the same time, you're looking, as the audience, you're looking at one man play two different people. Like that scene where you're first meeting them when they're waiting for Sammy, and it's first on Smoke, and then it pans, and then you see Stack, and it's like you see the blue in terms of Smoke, you see Stack in the red, and it was just like, oh my gosh, like just even how did you attune yourself to play against yourself, to play with yourself in the same movie like that. I really just have high admiration for Michael B. Jordan doing that. Really.
The filmmaking has come such a long way. I don't know if you ever recall seeing a TV series or a movie in the past where you have an actor playing twins. You never see them. You always see them far apart, right? Like you have, like a split screen. Like you have the actor over here, you got the actor over here, but they never connect to each other, right? Because technology at that time couldn't do that. But here, these two characters, they're just standing right next to each other and they're sharing a cigarette.
Yes.
Hands, hugging each other. It's just incredible. Like you really think they're two different actors.
Agreed.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was wonderful. Yeah. So, Smoke and Stack. By the way, I looked this up.
I know you did.
It's a little bit of trivia here. So, Smoke and Stack. Do you know? Have you ever heard of the person named Chester Arthur Burnett?
No.
Okay. Chester Arthur Burnett is a famous blues musician. Goes by the name of Howlin' Wolf. Right? Very influential. He recorded one of the most popular blues songs back in 1956. Do you know the name of that song?
I don't.
smokestack lightning. Come to find out, that is how Coogler came up with the name smokestack.
Oh my goodness!
And smokestack lightning is about Howlin' Wolf. When he, I guess when he grew up in the South, he would watch the trains, the steam trains go by, and at night they would spark. So there's the smokes, from the smokestack.
Right.
So that's the smokestack lightning. That's how he came up with
That's genius.
Song. Yeah. Pretty awesome. All right. And these two guys, they are traveling from Chicago. They back from Chicago. They're gangsters. They have a life of crime, if you can tell. You know that when they come back into town, and anybody that they meet, they're like, "Oh, you back?"
They got that. Yes, their reputation precedes them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But I like one scene that I do like about the twins at the very beginning, where good storytelling. You're supposed to show and not tell. There was no exposition needed to know that these two work well together.
Yes.
The scene with the rattlesnake. They're trying to comes out, and they both know what to do. So Stack just throws Smoke a knife, a blade. Smoke stabs the rattlesnake and rips it apart, and then that was it. You know what I mean? Like they connected. Like they knew what the other needed to do. Like they were like connected. Yeah. I don't know twins. I understand that twins are the same way. I don't know if you know twins like that, but they seem to know what the other is going to do before they do. They're prepared. They work together. They're like one person almost. And they could have gone the exposition way and said, "Oh, remember way back when we did this and we did that." But no, just that one scene. Working together to kill that rattlesnake. We're off to the races.
And I wanted to ask you, in light of that scene, considering where it happens in the movie, like the two of them are killing, they're about to unload their cargo or show their cargo to Sammy, and off they're going to go on their different paths. And then the snake appears in the middle of their plan, so to speak. And then, like you said, they executed how to execute the snake, but they did this also in front of Sammy. And I'm just wondering, do you make anything out of that in terms of this happening in front of Sammy, and also in happening with us as an audience, in light of this story that's about to unfold? Is that kind of like foreshadowing?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts around that?
I get the impression that Sammy, well, it makes sense because the boys, the twins, were in Chicago. You can expect that they were there for a pretty long time. So Sammy has not been in touch with them until recently. What I think that scene was trying to tell Sammy and us is that these two guys are very dangerous. This is what you can do with a rattlesnake. And they had no hesitation on how to kill that snake. And they, like I said, connected, and boom, 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 we out the way.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what Sammy needed to see and understand. These two guys are hitmen. They're from they lived in Chicago. You're talking about maybe the Prohibition era. So they know people. Very dangerous, and I think that just set the scene for all of us. That these two guys are not to be messed with.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. All right. So there's so the two of them actually split up. Right? So now we have Stack and Sammy driving a car. I want to talk about this moment when they're in the car and they're going around picking up people on the way. Stack has this idea about opening up a juke joint. And at the beginning, now I didn't pick this up when I saw it the first time or the second time. The third time I watched this, he is actually explaining to Sammy how to please a woman.
Yes. Yes.
And
I took notes.
Yeah. That's a setup, right? Because we know what's going to happen later on, but what was your thoughts about that?
Between the two of them, I noticed like the age difference. Like, Stack and Smoke are older, not just by years, but also they take an intentionally big brother approach with Sammy. So with Stack kind of saying, not only this is how you well, I'll go with that first about, how do you please a woman? Like, basically like savoring your favorite ice cream from favorite ice cream parlor downtown.
I love it.
Got me blushing. Okay, I'm gonna save that part. But I also just like, hey, brotherly, I'm going to tell you how to please a woman. And brotherly, I'm also going to give you advice. And brotherly, I'm going to take you on this trip alongside me. I really, that kind of cued me for how they are very endearing towards their cousin. They're also very protective. And I'm just trying to remember, was this also when he got the guitar and Stack was telling him this is from Charlie Patton? And that was another sign to me about the brotherliness, about making sure, we got you this guitar, want you to kind of, like, it just felt like they were just very, Stack rather, was very like the passing of the baton, the passing on of advice. I want to teach you some things about how to be a man. That also resonated with me on that part. Plus, it's like a journey. They're going to be making stops together, and you see how Sammy is going to be learning from the other men that come into that car, things about life and things about what it means to come into being a man. Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah.
And there was one other story after that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Sammy wanted to know what happened to
Yes. Now,
this is very interesting because, again, after a couple of views, I picked this up. So Sammy just came straight out like, did you kill your dad?
Mm-hmm.
And then Stack says, we did not kill my dad or our dad.
Smoke did. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, Sammy was very honest in this conversation because he told, Sammy and Stack. Stack was very forthright about this information, and he mentioned that his father was very abusive, and he was the one that got most of the beating.
Right.
Over Stack.
And in that incident, he was knocked out, and when he woke up, he saw the outcome.
Right. At that time, Smoke was burying his dad. Smoke had already killed him. But Stack is taking the stance to me as, one thing that he said about his dad was that he didn't mean to hurt him, which I thought was very interesting. So to me, Stack is the twin with the forgiving spirit. Like, it sounds like, okay, well, I know my dad was very, very, very abusive, very mean to me, but I forgave my dad. But Smoke, on the other hand, had vengeance in his heart. So that's very interesting. You can see that happening as the two characters go along. That's what sets them apart. I thought it was a very, very interesting backstory. When you have a backstory, it has to explain to them more about who the character is. That's what makes a good backstory.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And can I interject? I don't want to give away too much, but in light of what we were saying before with the kind of setup and payoff, with the part about killing the snake, meaning between the two brothers, they'll do what they have to do at all cost until the cost becomes a high price to pay for them both. Like, I'm thinking about towards the end of the movie, when there's like that kind of like the battle royale, if you will, that it made me think about. We could see in that moment when it comes to the two of them fighting against a common foe, what they'll do. But what happens when that foe is your mirror?
Yes. Very nice. And can I go back one more time about
Go ahead.
the snake?
Yes, go ahead.
Who was the one that killed the snake? It was Smoke. These
got it.
just threw him. Smoke was the one that actually, took the initiative.
Right.
So also very interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Let's and then talk about the guitar.
Yes.
Sammy started playing the guitar. Sammy's voice. This is by the way, Miles Caton. His first role, I believe. He is a blues singer. He's got a voice. I mean, he must be 20-something, 20.
And he's got the voice of an old soul. Like, that is
baritone. Yeah.
And he has this command of, like, when you just don't sing the blues, you sang the blues. Like, there's so much history and story in not only what he sings, but how he sings. And you just have to be like an old soul, like, in terms of like walking this earth, if you will, to be able to embody that type of voice and to sing with that type of conviction. Like, it exceeds talent. So to see him performing and singing so powerfully was transcendental.
Very powerful. And as soon as Stack hears his voice, he says,
"We're gonna make some money."
Let's move on and talk about the women.
Yes.
Okay, let's first talk about Annie, played by Wunmi Wasapu. Wunmi, you know her from Lovecraft Country. Very, very talented actor. She's
I'm telling you.
in the MCU. Talk about Smoke and Annie's relationship. You know, Smoke comes up and he stops by the grave of seems to be their child.
Of their child.
Died as an infant. And then Smoke walks inside Annie's home. And just talk about what you have to say about that conversation.
I have wrote some of that part down, so let me just get to my notes real quick. One thing that moved me was when Smoke went to the grave and touched the rock with the baby hand on it. And the level of, and you were saying like how we saw Smoke and Stack very, you know, they're very like, you don't mess with them, especially I know we skipped a little bit about what happened in the, well, I'll put a pin in that. But what happens in the town when Stack goes shopping? But I'll come back to Smoke for a minute. So, but to talk about like they're seeing that vulnerability and that fragility, and then when he's talking with Annie, you know, it's like they're sparring with their words in a way, because clearly he's been away a long time and they have this shared history. And then you begin to kind of see, like, as they're sparring with their words, you begin to see Smoke kind of begin to kind of let his shield down. Because I remember in a part of that dialogue where he's like, you know, naming all the different things that he's seen. Like, you know, I've seen like the things that men have done to each other, the different ways they can kill each other, and that can be like a sign of power. And then Annie is saying back to him that even with all the things you've seen and all the things you've done, and how you're pronouncing power through money, she has said, who you and Stack robbed to get enough money for them. Oh, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. But they're kind of going back and forth around like the money piece. And now, who you and Stack robbed to get enough money for them white men to sell you a whole mill. And one thing I just wanted to make a note of that is with her saying, you know, you're equating power with money, but what did you do to get that money? She turns around and says, I don't need that cursed money you got. And then as they're sparring more and more, there was a line that I wrote this down. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. When they were sparring back and forth and he's talking about the different things he's seen men do. She turns around and says to him, how you know I ain't pray and work every route my grandmother taught me to keep you and that crazy brother of yours safe since you've been gone. And looking at Michael B. Jordan's face and as Smoke, like he's with all this bravado and it cracks. And then he could tell like there's a wound that opens and he says, so why them roots didn't work on our own baby then?
Yeah, that's hard to hear. Yeah, and
That
she had no answer.
And she had no answer. She said, I don't know, but they worked on you. You still have that mojo bag. And then that's when she touched his chest. Yeah. And so that scene of their sparring and then that moment of vulnerability, like we've cracked through, we've broken through, and we see this vulnerable part in Smoke, that resonated. And to go to the setup and payoff you did earlier about you know, I love that when they're having this moment of vulnerability and Annie reaches out and touches Smoke's body and then says to him, your body ain't forget me.
Yeah. That's why he came back.
That's why he came back.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they have that connection that apparently will never go away.
Right.
You know, even, you know, unfortunately losing a child, that relationship that the two have together remain.
Yes.
Throughout it, we talk about that, how, you know, their journey as a couple. Now, do you know much about roots and mojo? Do you know what that means, or have you heard of it?
I've heard of that in terms of using like herbs and rituals and things of that nature so as to enact things in the physical world, enact things in the spiritual world. So yes, I have.
Okay. Okay. And there's hoodoo practices, something that they brought up in the movie. I guess we'll hear more about that. But it's African ancestry beliefs.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Can I also add something else too about that moment about Smoke and Annie? It just made me think about something else too in terms of like we as a people. Like there is in many respects there's a lot of pain that you could see that they have gone through. Like the fact of, visiting the grave of your child, coming back to someone that you've left and them feeling abandoned, you feeling torn. And yet even in all of and in being in the South in the 1930s as a Black person, as Black people, all of that confluence of pain and hurt and challenge, in this milieu of segregation, you still have love. And you have a love that is professed in words, that's demonstrated in body, that's shown its resilience despite its fragility, despite its being wounded. Like that was just, and again, to Coogler's credit around like exposition and things, it's not all told through words. It's shown in a touch. It's shown in a still shot of a father touching the grave of his baby. It's in the shade of this house. And it's where you have little children coming in and getting materials from Annie to then go back and take to their parents, to their family. And Smoke is like, they're not giving you real money. And she's like, this isn't about real money. This is about taking care of others, as she did in that moment of taking care of Smoke. Incredible. That's everything I think about that movie. No. There's so much more, but I know.
no. That's great. We'll talk more about Annie. How about Mary? Let's talk about Mary, played by Haley Steinfeld.
Yes.
Okay. She is Haley Steinfeld. I want to make sure I got her name right. Mixed race, but she passes for white, and she is Stack's former girlfriend. Okay. She appears at the train station, right? And she seems to be very upset with Stack because he just up and left this relationship without any notice. She just lost her mother, and he wasn't around to grieve with her.
Right.
What do you think of that character?
This is interesting because at the train station, like she's crossing all type of boundaries because in terms of she's getting on the train with other white people. She's walking to the Black area. Sammy's even like, there's a white woman that's looking at you. And he said, don't look. But there was something defiant in Mary, but also hurt because she's like saying to him, as we'll also then learn throughout the movie, like my mother was there for both of you. And my mother took care of you. My mother supported you. And you couldn't even so much as be there for her funeral. And you left me. And she was really specific, about what you left and how you left. But you left me. And I have been willing to love you afar, even when you abandoned me. That was a lot to put out there about yourself. That when I was watching her do that was like, wow, that's brave. That's powerful. And you're doing it in this social setting where Stack clearly knows that lives could be lost. You know what I mean? And just in terms of this woman is approaching him representing a certain demographic configuration, and he's trying to be, the way you talk, the way you present yourself, and she's just being like, but don't you remember me? Don't you remember us? Like, that was powerful. And as later on, as we'll discuss too, she's hurt. Say what you will about the demographics and the time period and what we know in terms of how ethnicity came to bear on people's lifestyles, not lifestyles, but came to impact their social status and their social safety. She's crossing all those lines to say to him that, I have loved you and you have hurt me,
She's very comfortable with, this is the segregated South.
Right.
Right. But she's very comfortable walking around, Black folk. And she's okay with that.
Yeah.
She is very brave.
She
doesn't care who's looking or who's watching. But of course, Stack does.
Right, clearly,
because,
for reasons he should be.
Yeah, exactly. Because he could lose his life, being around, a white woman back at that day. But yeah, so we're going to see more of Mary. Of course, she comes back. The last woman of sinners, there are others, but I want to talk about Pearlene. Pearlene is a married woman. She seems to have her eyes on Sammy, and Sammy has his eyes on her. When you first saw her, she was also at the train station listening to Sammy play. What did you think of her? Yeah, I like the look that she was giving. Like it was kind of a sultry look. Like trying, like the come here, let me talk to you type of look.
It was mixed.
But she's a married woman. So.
Yes, and it was mixed with the "you're out my league" because the setup and payoff around when Stack was talking to Sammy about how to please a woman. Sammy's kind of like, okay, I see a woman over there that catches my eye. I'm going to start trying to flex, if you will. And he approaches her, and she's like, but I'm a married woman. But clearly, she's got some interest,
right?
Because she would, if she was like, I'm married, sanctified, she wouldn't even give him the time of day.
She wouldn't have been there without her husband.
Absolutely, right? Or she certainly would not be talking and entertaining other men the way that she was.
Right.
But it was just very intriguing. Like clearly, she knew that she's married, but she was like, Sammy interests me. Let's
see where this goes.
Yeah, just enough intrigue to keep you curious. She
is a little older, also more experienced.
One would think.
Yes. So you were talking about the going into town with Stack going into town.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's get into talking about the rest of the characters.
Yes.
So we're in town. There are these shop owners, right? Named Bo Chow and his wife Grace, right? So they are, the shop owners. There was a wonderful scene when the daughter Lisa went to go see her, went to get her mother.
Yes.
Right. So, well, let me step back. So, Smoke came into the shop and told the husband Bo that he likes some catfish. He's going to open up this joint. Wants to know if he can offer some catfish, and then he wanted Bo's wife to actually create signs for the place. So Lisa, the daughter, goes out and gets her mother across the street, to another shop. Right, I guess they own two shops. The camera is behind the door.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
Right. Then when she goes inside the other shop and gets her mom comes out, Grace comes out, and the camera is leading her back to the first shop.
Yes.
I thought that was an amazing scene.
I agree with you.
Up on that. Like, it was just one continuous scene.
Yes, and I'll add to that because you wanted to establish, for those who aren't familiar with Clarksdale, Mississippi, 1932, what is this setting like? So you have Bo Chow in the store that's servicing Black people on the Black side of the street. But interesting enough, with him being his family, him, Grace, and Lisa, the daughter, being Asian, they can cross back and forth across the street in a way that the other groups, it would then bring up other questions, eyes, etc. Because Grace is on the other side of the street, on the white side, where all the white people are shopping and congregating. So I just thought, even in terms of the way that was shot, like you said, that was intriguing. You didn't have to explain. You could just simply see as this family crosses on opposite sides of the street. This is the streets of the town in which all of these people live, and this is how the town operates. You have one group of people on one side, one group of people on the other side.
And the camera told the story.
The camera told the story.
Just in less than a minute. Amazing.
Can I throw more piece in there about the town also?
Yeah.
In the sense of how, I liked when Smoke went up to the little girl to say to her, listen, I want you to watch my car. And what I liked, again, how these men, even though they have a reputation, they also kind of play against that typecasting of them to show they're kind of humanity. Meaning, for an example, with the little girl, he's like, I'll give you 10 cents for every minute. And then he's trying to teach her because she's like, yeah, I'll take that. No, numbers got to be in conversation with each other. I had to write that down. Numbers got to be in conversation. So I know Keith is going to be hitting us up for allowance and going to be a negotiation going forward. But he says, so give me a number and then let's go back and forth. a higher number. And he's teaching her, know your worth. Don't let anybody tell you what you're worth. You negotiate back and forth until you reach a point where you feel your worth in this particular transaction, and by implication in life, is respected by the other person. Like, that to me was like, that was bravo.
Very good. All right. So we have Grace and Bo. They're on board. We go back to Stack, and he's into town with Sammy, and they pick up a couple people. So first one is Delta Slim.
Yes. Classic. Veteran.
Yes, harmonica and piano player. He has such great lines.
Yes. yes.
So Slim is just, he's on the corner. He's at the train station.
Yep.
He has this little corner area. He's playing for money, I expect. And so Sammy and Stack comes over. Stack is trying to talk him into joining him at the Juke joint, and Slim is, no, I'm good here. The place I'm going to, been there for 10 years.
Right, you might just be in town overnight.
Exactly right. You're like, just open one night, close the next night. It's too risky, and he referenced Sammy and the guitar, and Sammy was about to pull out the guitar to play. He said, no, son. So if you weren't his cousin and a young pup to boot, I'd cut your ass. It's like, you taking money out of my pocket. Put the guitar away. Until he was convinced that, he was going to do the right thing and go and follow Stack to this Juke joint. And now the two of them are playing together. That was pretty cool. So anything else you want to say about Delroy and Delta Slim?
No, I think you covered that part. Yeah.
Okay. And then the next person they pick up is Cornbread.
Woo, yes.
Played by Omar Benson. So he's in the fields working and picking cotton with his wife, and he's a little reluctant. Like, of course, every time Smoker Stack comes up, people are like, I'm in trouble, stay away from me. Of course, Cornbread is also on board, and they're all heading to the Juke joint.
Yep.
Cornbread, anything you want to say about his introduction?
No, I actually want to say conversation about him a little bit later.
All right, so let's get to the Juke joint.
Okay.
So word has spread, obviously. People are coming in, and by the way, so let's talk about this Juke joint. At the beginning of it,
yes,
they were sold this building by a bunch of white men.
Well, one person.
Yes, right. You're right. He's asking questions. Where your boy's from, and what you gonna do with the place. A little nosy. But they sold. The man sells the place to the twins. Now the place is jumping. It's open. Everybody's coming in, and there's people coming in with. Some people don't really have a lot of money.
Right.
There was one man that paid for drinks with wooden nickels.
Yes.
Wooden nickels.
Yes.
But Stack was okay with it. Smoke wasn't.
Smoke was not. Smoke was like, this is a business.
Exactly. But that was pretty cool.
Yes.
And then Cornbread is playing the bouncer. Right. Mary shows up at the house.
Yes.
Okay. And she enters in. Smoke sees her immediately, and he goes to Stack and says, "Get ready." They have a conversation where he finally admits to her.
Yes.
That he still loves her.
Yes. I got some quotes from that. Can I share them? Stack says, "I taught you how to walk away when the money is up too. Got you a rich white husband. Got you a farm. Now go home to it. Mary, I didn't want to be white. I wanted to be with you. I know you never planned to stay. Stack, I just want to keep you somewhere safe. And that was never going to be here. And that was never going to be with me. Never." The level of vulnerability and sacrifice that one must have in terms of Stack as a man to say, I do love you, but I also know where we live. I also know who we live around. And I know that my love of you is going to make me want to put you in the best position possible. You're going to have to pass. And if you pass, you'll be safer. Being with me as a black man and a black man with the reputation that I have, me and my brother, is not going to work out. And so I need you to be safe. And my way of protecting you and the way in which I can show my love is trying to keep myself away from you as much as possible. And she's the direct opposite. So, but I thought that dialogue did so much to demonstrate that these two brothers are not monoliths, because the ways in which they tell the women they love, both Annie and Mary, that my love requires my distance and my love requires my protection of you, but it may not be demonstrative of what you may expect love to show, is just, wow, that was powerful. So that's what I thought about the scene and the conversation with Mary and Stack. That was
Stack finally broke. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
He really expressed his true feelings. He admitted that he still loves her.
Yes.
But he's just out there trying to protect her.
Yes.
That's where he's coming from.
And can you, if it's okay to ask, can you as a man imagine you loving a woman so much that you're like, I want you to be married off and with this other person? How did that make you feel seeing that scene of a man demonstrating his love to a woman in this particular way?
Yeah. But it's loving a woman who you're not allowed to love. That's pretty much it, you know. That's the sign of times. I mean, even now, it may not be. It's more acceptable interracial marriages now than it was back in the 1930s. But back then it was a matter of life and death.
Literally.
You know what I mean? Like, you can love this woman, but you may not be able to have a long relationship with her because, you know, you walk out and the wrong person sees the two of you together, then that's it for her.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's heartbreaking. I can understand where he's coming from, and I can understand where she's coming from. She is like, I don't care. You're the one for me. I want to be, you know, with the white folks. I want to be with the black folks. Right? More comfortable, the most comfortable. And you know, like, he finally had to say, well, okay, well, it's still there. Right. I don't know if this is going to work, but I still love it. You know.
Can I jump back a little bit? Because you made me remember something where earlier when we had the car ride with Delta Slim, where his story about him and his friend, I think his friend's name was Rick, where they're also showing you like how dangerous it can be to assert yourself in the South, if you will, where they were being, you know, handed off to, you know, perform at these different people's houses, but they actually got a little bit of money. And then Rick went on a train, and then I can't remember, it was like the police officers or other people in the neighborhood, then turned around and then took his money and then blamed him for, you know, inappropriate acts, if you will, and then turned around and lynched him right there at the train station. Right. Like, you understood as he was telling the story to Sammy, about the dangers about like crossing the lines, if you will. And I think that was kind of done for us as an audience to kind of let us know the setting, how dangerous it was. Like, we know historically, you know, in terms of our own experiences, but also just in their story, that's how dangerous. Because I remembered when Delta Slim was saying to the chain gang, hold your heads. And then Sammy asked why. So that made me think, fast forward now to when Stack is having this conversation with Mary. He's like, he could hold his head. He could assert his love. And there could be consequences for that during that time period. All right. Are we getting to the oh my gosh. Preacher Boy's debut. That's how I have it in my notes.
This is interesting because, you know, that opening line that you read from Annie, you know, about the legends of people born with the gift of making music so true, that was said again right before. And then you understand what the words mean.
Yes.
Because the last line is conjuring spirits of the past and future. And all of a sudden, you see Bootsy Collins come out.
Oh my gosh, right?
Bootsy come out, you know, the Funk Master coming out with the electric guitar. And then you see hip hop, you see the DJ scratching. So that's music, past and present.
Yes.
And international music.
Yes.
And it's colorful. It's, you know, it's Sammy's music that's playing. So let me talk about Sammy's song. He wrote a song for his dad called I Lied to You.
Yes.
Right? And the chorus goes, I love you, Papa. You did all you could do. They say the truth hurts, so I lied to you.
Yes.
I love the blues. That's his profession. You know, like he's telling his dad, this is it. This is understand where you're coming from. You're a man of the cloth. This is my mother. Love the blues, and he's playing his heart out, mind, body, and soul. And that's the power of the music, the conjuring of past and present music coming up and coming out, and you're seeing it right there unfold. Like visually, it's stunning to look at.
Yes.
What do you want to say about this?
Oh my gosh, you can't just tell me about this almost week, because it was just in that scene when we were in the movie theater. One, as a girl from the Bronx, I was like, "What?" Okay, but at the same time, like, just as a Black woman, as a child of the North and the South, like, I felt a child of the 1970s. Just to put myself out there, like, I felt seen. Like, Ryan Coogler had orchestrated a moment where we transcended time, place, oppression, affliction, and that transcendentalism through music was like captured in that moment. Whether you were in Malaysia, whether you were in Africa, whether you were in 1980s Bronx, whether you were 1970s Parliament, and whether you were 1990s twerking, like, or 2000s, it was just, it demonstrated how our blues was a portal to past, present, future. And it was a portal to others' possibilities. Like when the Chows started dancing, they're dancing in a juke joint, conjuring their spirits. And then that confluence of dance and song and celebration was burning the house down, literally and metaphorically. Like, it burnt down the walls that were housing, containing, constricting, refining, defining people, and letting them be free. It burnt all the house down.
Yes,
literally.
Right, yeah.
And metaphorically, in a kind of biblical spiritual sense, that which was at least in heaven, when it's done, then the devil knows it, if you will. And once Sammy's song was released, then you begin to see the other chain of events that manifest from this powerful young man. I'm saying child, in terms of my age, but this young man with the power and talent that he's given to conjure and transcend time and amass people and affirm people all in that space. The devil was like, "Who's this?" And came a knocking. Okay.
Exactly. The gift can bring healing to their communities, but it can also attract them.
Yes. Yes.
By the way, I Lied to You is an original song written by Oscar winner and Grammy winner Ludwig Göransson.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Mandalorian.
Who will once again be Oscar nominated and Grammy nominated next year.
Yes, indeed.
And he co-wrote the song with Raphael Sadiq.
Of course.
How about that?
Of course. Yeah. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur amongst Tony. Yeah. And can I add one more thing too? There was a cutaway during Preacher Boy's debut. That's what I'm nicknaming it. Yes. Where Delta is.
Yes, I got that.
Is you got it written down too? See, and he was talking to Delta to Sammy, saying blues wasn't forced on us like that religion. Nah, son, we brought this with us from home. It's magic what we do. It's sacred and big. And what I loved also about that scene, which I make a comparison later when we had the Irish dance circle, is like it was inclusive and expansive. And it didn't require worship of Sammy in terms of like this music was not about celebrating Sammy's arrival. It was in celebration of everyone's arrival, everyone's beliefs, everyone's origin story. And there was room for them all and more, which also is done with high energy and light, which later, when we got Remmick, should I
just get into Remmick?
Can we get into Remmick?
Here comes.
I'm gonna say that dance, but yeah. I'll come to that. Okay.
Let's. All right. Here we go.
Here we go. Here comes the devil, literally. Right. But can I interject real quick? Yeah. Okay, because we talked about Stack giving Sammy
giving
an education.
Yeah, Pearlene. Yes.
And do you want to talk about that now, or we want to?
Yeah, why not? Let's talk about that because that happened right after his debut.
Yes,
right? Okay.
yes.
So yeah, we talked about the setup.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Stack is telling Sammy how
Mhm.
to please a woman.
Yes.
Sammy puts it to good use.
Do you want me to lead, or you want to lead?
Yo, you got it. That was. Well, let me just say this. Like,
yes.
With those three leading actresses,
Mhm.
Annie and Mary and Pauline,
Pearlene.
Mm-hmm. They are involved in very intimate moments.
Yes.
With their significant other, right?
Mhm.
And that's not coincidental. Like
Mhm.
Coogler wanted to show the sexuality of black,
Yes.
you know, and well, sexuality of black couples,
Mhm.
right? And they're different couples, very different couples, right? So let's talk about, you know,
about Pearlene and Sammy.
You go ahead.
Okay, so I'm so glad we did that disclaimer earlier.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so Stack told Sammy earlier about, like, you know, finding a woman's button, if you will. But I want to kind of expand that, not just be a button, but like an activation of their body and soul, if you will. And I'm just trying to think, can I say it with maturity? I'm going to quote and then I'll discuss it.
Mhm.
When Sammy says to Pearlene, because she's like, you know, oh my gosh, I walked here, let me freshen up. And he looked and said, I just want to taste you. To know a man is willing to say that and to perform that, and there's all different types of names and titles, you know, going down, et cetera, pleasuring a woman, etc. It was beautiful. Just to hear, like, I want to taste you. Like, knowing that a woman's body can have, if you will, all these different flavors and textures, and the willingness, you know, to indulge the salt of her earth, if you will, was like, wow, that was beautiful to see. Now, I know, you know, the setting, it's in a juke joint and is in a back room, and that can have other connotations. I just want to focus on the dynamic part of Sammy and Pearlene together and his willingness to please and pleasure her that way, and to seek it out, because there's all other different positions that they could have engaged in terms of their initial copulation, if you will. But the fact that he wanted to taste her and know her taste first was.
Now, it's interesting that you say that, because I did say earlier that Sammy may be inexperienced, but maybe not. He may have been here in this situation before. Maybe, you know, he wasn't really very good at it. And, you know, the conversation came up with he and Stack about how to hit that button.
Right.
You know, and then he saw Pearlene, like, okay, well, this is the
moment. Yeah, because didn't
he got it right this time.
Because when did Sammy did Stack come back and said, "Boy, find that button"? Was right?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Yeah. So that was it was very, very beautiful. It wasn't. It didn't seem fake. You know what I mean? Like, this is exactly how, you know, this is how it's done.
Yes, it is.
Back to the devil.
Back to. Yes.
Dude, man.
Woo!
It's like he just dropped right out of the sky.
He dropped out of the sky.
Scene.
Right.
Yeah. And his body is just smoldering.
He's being chased.
Yes. He's being chased, right? Body chopped out.
And
he runs into this shack. And this woman's there, you know.
Joan and Bert.
Right, yes. They're part of the clan, because you saw the hoods in the back.
Yes, you did.
Right. And, you know, he's telling them that these Indians are coming after me. I just need a safe place to stay or whatever.
How about that?
And of course they let him in. Chopped out appears. What are they cool?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, the way that they held themselves and the way they were dressed.
Yes.
Like, they were just cool.
Yes.
Yeah. And they came and said, looking for this very dangerous man. I haven't seen anyone. And, you know, Jones says, no, we don't know what you're talking about. We haven't seen anybody. So they take off.
Right. Can I interject real quick?
Please.
Because I do have one little critique.
Yeah.
Like, in knowing how much both Native Americans and African Americans and people of African descent have such a commingled and intermingled history, The only critique that I would have of this movie was in that moment where and it's not Ryan Coogler's responsibility, so I want to make sure that, I'm not putting the weight on him. But in introducing the Choctaw, I would have loved to have seen more of how these groups, because we saw like the Chow family, how they were intermingled with Smokestack, with the Smokestack twins and the African American community. But knowing historically that these communities were intermingled, I would have liked to have seen that more than in this fictitious context, them being the vampire hunters, if you will. But I also appreciate that Ryan Coogler gave nod and acknowledgement to that by having them represented in this movie.
Yes.
And not in a typecast way either. Not like, my movie, that. Oh my gosh, that movie just devolved into stereotypes and typecast. But unlike that movie, I felt like they were well represented, purposeful, but I would have loved more expansion of their story in Sinners, and also of the larger narrative about the people that make up the South during the 1930s. But I digress.
Yeah. Remmick is played by Jack O'Connell. Have you ever heard this actor?
No, I don't think I have. Mm-hmm.
His star is on the rise because apparently he's going to be in the new Knives Out movie. Knives
Out 3?
Yeah.
That's good. You were telling?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Playing a priest, which is very interesting.
That's very interesting. If you see Remmick tearing it up in here.
But anyway, so he's a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
He's a vampire, and of course, he turns both Joan and Burke into vampires.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get to the part where they're standing outside the juke joint.
Yes.
And they're looking and hearing music play, and they're like outside looking in.
Yes.
How can I be a part of this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they walk up to the front door, and they introduce themselves.
Mm-hmm. Very cordial, very polite.
They have their instruments,
mm-hmm.
Banjos, or violins or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very nice, very polite, Remmick, and he says, "I heard the music, and I'm just like, see if we come in and jam with you.
Mm-hmm. We've got money.
Yeah, we got money." And then this was an amazing moment.
Mm-hmm.
It just happened so quickly. So Smoke is at the front door,
mm-hmm.
and he asked the question, "Y'all clan?" And then you see Remmick just do this, like he was like taken aback, like,
right, he's offended,
sir.
Mm-hmm.
We believe in equality.
Right.
And then then the trio decided that they were going to let's see what you can do.
Right.
And they played this song called "Pick Poor Robbie Queen."
Yes, I got that here.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
I picked his head, I picked his feet, I would have picked his body, but he wasn't fit to eat.
It's like, what?
Didn't that jail relax? It sounded good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like the subject matter was a little iffy, but
unusual.
They were in harmony.
Mm-hmm.
They were talented, you can tell. But Stack said, Smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
yes,
we don't do that kind of music here. You go down the street.
Mm-hmm.
Play your music somewhere else. And Remmick is a little
yes,
taken aback, and he says, "Okay, we'll walk away slowly in case you change your mind."
Right.
And then, so now, Mary, I want you to talk about this because I wasn't sure what I thought about what Mary was doing. So apparently, she's using her privilege card.
Yes, she is,
and saying to Stack, "Well, why don't I go and talk to them and see if I can get some money out of them because I know you need it, like for the juke joint,
right?
Because they seem to have a lot of money." So she goes and has a conversation with them, and things don't go well. Did she have good intentions? Do you think she was really trying to help them, or was she trying to be like the savior, the white savior, and or am I looking at it too deep?
No. Yeah. I want to back up just a little bit about why was she going out there to talk to them?
Correct.
So in light of Smoke and Stack realizing that they were going to come up short because unfortunately the economy of the South, with it not paying people well, people were bringing what they had, but of course it wasn't going to be sufficient to cover the cost and things in terms of this particular night. The guys knew they weren't going to make any money, and we also realize, we're hearing it throughout the movie, the Irish beer, the Italian wine. I think it was Mary that put it together. Mary or Annie, one, I can't remember, but one of the two put together, you on the run. Because I think it was Mary. Because basically saying you pit those two groups in Chicago against each other, stealing their stuff, and now you're going to be in some type of way. What you going to do about it? And then I think she took it upon herself to say, well, let me go out there, to some degree playing that kind of race card, giving her the way she would present visually to them, that maybe she could get over and get them in, get a little bit of their money, etc. So I think in some part she was playing. It's mixed. I think she may have been, because there was nothing for her to physically or monetarily gain from approaching these perfect strangers.
Right.
But she was in over her head. She thought she was playing a card on them, but Remmick already peeped her card, especially when where is that piece? Where when they're having a conversation and he gives her some of the money, and then she's like, "Where'd you get this money from?" And then he says, "I would have liked to," and she's talking about, and he says, like, "I see your pain." So that's what makes me think she may have been going out there to try to do one thing, but she was in over her head on another. So he's basically bringing to her, the question about, not the question, but like, as he begins to talk, she's realizing I'm kind of like in a dilemma right now because I came out with one agenda. He's starting to exercise another. He's talking about her grief and her pain over her mother. One, how does he know that? And then the other is when he turned around and says to her, "I would have liked to have saved your mother from her fate. I can still save you from yours." I sat there, I was like, she's in over her head.
Yeah.
She's in over her head. And then when she realizes, and then she tries to, get the upper hand with a gun, and realize once my man is airborne and we're back in the Juke joint, what happened there? So
right, exactly. So, so when she walks back in, Mary, she's already dead.
Yes.
At the time, Pearlene is on the stage performing a song called Pale.
I had that too.
Really?
Yes.
Really. So now she goes to Stack and gives him the money that she got from Remmick crew, and then she is, she goes after Stack. Like she's, this, I don't know, this urge or whatever.
Yes, very seductive, right? Alluring, like a temptress, and
So they go into a room, and she takes him, and he sees her drooling, and she gives. She passes that waste, I guess, for a matter of speaking, onto him.
Saliva.
That's right, exactly. And then meanwhile, Smoke is looking for Stack and have no idea where he is.
Right. Send Sammy.
Right. He sends Sammy to look for Stack, and Stack is. This is also another funny moment with Slim. Slim says, "Oh yeah, he in the room over there. Go
on in there."
So Sammy goes in, opens the door, and the two of them are having sex. Sammy closes the door, and Slim says, "Oh, they busy, huh?" Sammy goes to Smoke and tells him, "Well,
I'm preoccupied.
Smoke is busy right now." Smoke says, "I don't care," and he goes over to the door, and she's
ravishing him.
Yes, and she has torn into the skin, and he is bleeding out. Smoke fires every single bullet that he has. It doesn't kill her. She runs out, and Stack just dies.
Can I add to that? Because I didn't catch this when we went to see the movie. I just caught it in watching it again. Stack says to Smoke, "I'm so scared, Smoke." So it kind of goes back to how Smoke is like the kind of like the not the big brother, but like the brother that is always there in the moment of crisis, from when what happened with his father to, this is business, we need to get this money, to in this last moment, his twin is looking at him and saying, "I'm so scared." And then when he passed, Smoke is looking at Annie and says, "You got magic to bring my brother back? You got mojo back for him? Best thing about me is him." In the midst of Mary yelling, what is she? We're gonna kill all of y'all tonight. Like, the juxtaposing of those two things, what's to come and what's happening in this moment. But these two brothers, where something has now gotten in between them both and broken them, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Cornbread used to
I forgot. He
used to go take a pee. And he goes across town to use the bathroom. He's gone for a while. The reason, of course, why he's gone is because he's dead.
Right.
So now he returns to the joint,
and
he wants to be let in.
Right.
And then the people are, around him like, well, what are you talking about? Just walk in. You big enough to push your way through.
That's Annie, exactly.
Yeah, right, Annie. And then, well, that's impolite. Why would I want to do that?
Right.
Just let me in.
Invite me in.
You're right. So that's Remmick talking, because they wouldn't let him in earlier.
Right.
But now him as Cornbread, maybe they'll let him in. Right? They didn't fall for that. So Cornbread says, give me my money in. And Smoke holds out his hand.
And it's like,
fight out of crime.
Well, he tries to bite him, but he pulled him outside.
Yes. Yeah. So, Cornbread is also dead. Let's now talk about Rocky Road to Dublin.
Can we, right before that, because I want to get to that.
Yes.
Annie gives a monologue that I thought was really good. Like, she's explaining, there's haints in terms of, like, haunting spirits, but she's saying these aren't haints. Everybody's like, well, what's happened? These are now vampires. And since we as an audience are very well versed in vampires, I like how Ryan Coogler had her character, like, kind of for that context, that historical period, in that moment, allow her just to kind of explain it in a way where the people in the situation would understand.
Right.
So she says, the soul gets stuck in the body, can't rejoin the ancestors. Cursed to live here with all this hate, can't even feel the warmth of a sunrise. And I was like, wow, like, she was able to translate this, horrific moment in a way that we wouldn't feel like, oh, yet again, another vampire movie. But it's like, this is different. This is nuanced, given the historical context and this immediate situation that the characters are facing around what's happening to their loved ones, their community, and the road to Dublin.
Rocky Road to Dublin. Now, this scene, music is such an important character in this movie. And I was thinking, like, this could be a film. This could be a musical on Broadway. Like, Coogler can do a lot with this. But I can understand why 25 years from now he wants to have a rights. I could see this being a musical on Broadway.
That could be.
It's amazing, like, the music in this movie.
Yes.
And this scene to me was mesmerizing.
Yes.
I take my eyes off this.
Yes. Yes. Well, as you can see, I got notes.
Yes. And by the way, this is an Irish folk song from the 19th century.
Wow.
Go even further back. Yeah, I think it goes further back. I'm sorry, not the 19th century, but yeah. So this has been passed down from generation to generation. This folk song.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you want to say about Rocky Road? So,
as a prelude to that, Delta Slim is talking, I think it's directly to Sammy, but he's basically saying, he says to, no, let me backtrack. He says something along the lines of that the devil comes from musicians. Like, I remembered him saying that, and then this segueing into the dancing and the circle. So here's something that's interesting. I noted in the movie how Remmick is the center, and everyone is dancing around him, and in dancing around him in darkness, which is different than when Sammy was performing and he has people around him, but they're not dancing around him in homage or homage to him. It's in celebration of them, and it's done in the light. Like, his music is a porthole into other people's possibilities. Remmick's music is a porthole into his worship, their worshiping of him.
Yes.
So I wrote things like, this seemed to me to be like the devil as an imitator and altered proliferator. So he's kind of inserting himself in the same circumstance as Sammy, being the musician in the center of the circle, but for completely different intentions. These people are singing and worshiping him because he's, bitten all of them, or they've bitten each other. They're now all interconnected, but they're all connected to him. Whereas Sammy is opening a portal in music so that everybody can be interconnected to one another. And I also wrote, in the sense of like properties of the devil, if you will, in terms of characteristics, copies that which God creates or manifests. So clearly, in terms of our spiritual traditions, Southern traditions, religious traditions, etc., Sammy is manifesting his gifts and talents and callings, if you will, and therefore a greater goal. Whereas Remmick is trying to take from other people. And then I also wrote a circle around him in terms of Remmick versus a transcendental circle around them with Sammy. And then after the performance, everybody out there, all these dead bodies, metaphorically speaking, circle around Remmick and not breaking down walls, but walling themselves around him in worship. And I was just, sorry. And just seeing that contrast was just, wow. I wanted to ask you something too, in light of this. Did you notice that at least early when we first meet Remmick is wearing a wedding band? Did you know he was married? Did you notice that?
No, I didn't notice a wedding band. What do you think that means?
I don't know. I mean, we know towards the end of the movie when he gives his monologue after the Lord's Prayer, he talks about his centuries and his people and things like that. But it made me wonder, who was he connected to through marriage? Because at least, as per seeing the wedding band, which I did not notice the first time seeing the movie, that it then made me wonder, well, to some degree, what is Remmick's backstory? But that performance, also, I couldn't stop watching it. It was just fascinating. And admittedly, as a tangent, when you then saw all the reels that people were making of that afterwards, and you could see how much people that moment resonated with them for varieties of reasons. But how about you? What did you think of that dance? And were there any contrasts or comparisons you made between Remmick's circle and Sammy's circle?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So first of all, about the music, it's wonderful music.
Yes.
And it's, I'm at a point now that I've seen this scene so many times that I'm tapping my toes.
You were dancing on your rocky road to Dublin.
It's just incredible. It is incredible. And this Jack O'Connell, he's a singer apparently. He can sing. Mm-hmm. That's him doing his voice. That's him doing the dances. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's he's just incredible for one thing. But you're right about the dead circling him.
Yes.
What did he want? He wanted to just be a part of something, right? But not only be a part of something, but be the center of attention, right? And that is what worshiping is about: false idols or devil worship. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what this is. Come to me. I have what you need. Surround me. I give you immortality or whatever it is that he promised to give them. Just as long as you worship me. So
right,
that made sense.
And through the vehicle of music, he coveted what Sammy could do. Sammy's performance released other people's spirits, metaphorically and literally, in terms of seeing them in the dance floor. Remmick's releasing of his spirit took the light out of others, which was
yeah, exactly right. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, after this, and now it's a battle between the living and the dead.
Yes.
So the people who Juke joined are ready for battle. And it was a very bloody one. Mm-hmm. We lost a lot of lives. We lost Grace, Slim, Pearlene, and talk about Annie, because that was huge.
Yeah.
It was so huge that it actually upset Stag and Mary, who are already dead.
Right. So how about that?
They wanted. I don't know if they wanted to take her for themselves, or they wanted to keep her alive for whatever reason. But backtracking, so Smoke and Annie had this conversation, everything would happen to me if I got infected or whatever. Mm-hmm. Take that stake and just drive it right through my heart. Mm-hmm.
Take me out. I want to go be with our child.
Yes, exactly. Right. And Smoke's like, no, I can't do that. But when the moment came, and she was, infected or
or bitten. Mm-hmm.
He looked at her and said, you gotta do what we talked about. You gotta do it.
Right.
And Smoke did it, and that set off Stack and Mary so badly.
Right.
Like that was very interesting because they didn't care about anybody else but Annie. What was that about? Did they want her to keep her alive?
I wonder.
Did they want to, maybe kill her, and infect her, have her become a vampire, be like one of them?
I would. So was it Stack that bit her? Like, I'm trying to remember that.
I don't remember. Yeah, you're right. I don't remember how she was injured.
So
I don't remember.
I was wondering.
Some other random vampire.
But I might have to go back now and watch this again. Yeah. I think it was Stack because I remember just asking because the person that bit her looked at Smoke and said something, and I'm just trying to remember. So I don't want to be inaccurate, but if I'm accurate and it was Stack, then I did have a question about why did he, out of all the people he could have attacked, why did he attack her, knowing the history? But to what you were saying, like Mary had a very visceral reaction to when Annie expired, and then that seemed to make for a turning point. But I have to think on that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe the purpose was if it was Stack or Mary who infected her or bit her, that they would provide her immortality.
Right.
Because Smoke, took that stake.
Right.
There is no immortality, right? So she's just gone. She's not going to come back. So I think maybe that was what it was. They wanted her to live with her.
Mm-hmm. True. Because Annie did say like around Mary somewhere earlier in that movie about that we're family. Something like that. Mm-hmm.
And then, then we have the scene with Smoke and Stack going at each other.
Yes.
And Smoke had the opportunity to kill Stack, but he didn't. He let his brother go.
Yep.
All right. So we'll come back to that. And then let's go into Sammy and Remmick.
Ooh. Yeah. Okay. Do you think it was a drowning or do you think it was a baptism?
I wrote down baptism at first.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that he was trying to intimidate him because what he said to Sammy was, I want your songs and I want your stories.
Yes.
He was going to take it by, if you weren't going to give it to me, after I asked for it, I'm going to take it with force.
Yes.
Right? And that's, the devil or Remick, taking something that didn't belong to him, calling it his own.
Oh, can I even backtrack with that?
Yeah.
When Remmick does that with Bo and Grace, where Remmick is at the door of the juke joint and, Bo was trying to entice Grace out. And then Remmick says to Grace, or says to the group by implication, I am your way out. This world already left you for dead. Won't let you build. Won't let you fellowship. We'll just do that together. And then he went and spoke to Grace about what Bo knows about Grace, etc. Mm-hmm. Yes, but that what you're saying just made me like in that water, made me jump back to that speech. And when you and I both had that kind of interpretation of being in the water as drowning, as well as like a baptism, like in terms of like baptism, dying to the flesh and coming in and coming up in the spirit. But also, how about the fact that Remmick was reciting the Lord's Prayer alongside Sammy? Like Sammy started, and Remmick was like, "Hey, listen, I'll finish it for you." And then everybody else started also. What did you make of that?
Well, that's because Remmick has a history of, knowing the Bible because it was forced upon him, as he said. So he said to Sammy, the men who stole my father's land forced those words upon us. I hated those men, but the words still bring me comfort.
How about that?
How about that? I'm assuming that he's talking about, Ireland being ruled by the British Empire for so many hundreds of years. They finally got their independence in the early 20th century. That this religion, just like Slim talked about, was forced upon him.
Yes.
So he knows the Bible just as well as Sammy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that was him saying, like, you're not telling me anything
I don't already know, and I haven't already experienced.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was very chill.
Mm-hmm.
And then Smoke comes out and kills Remmick. Stabs him in the head with the guitar.
Well, Sammy hit him in the head with the guitar, and then
Right, you're right.
Right.
Sammy hits him in the head with the guitar.
And when he's pulling that out,
right, why it's broken.
Exactly.
And then Smoke comes behind him and stabs him down with the stake. And then sunrise.
Sunrise.
And then we know about vampires that they can't survive during the sunlight, so they all burn to death.
Those that were exposed.
Those that are dead. So really, the only two that made it out of all of this was Smoke and Sammy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
was it
Smoke and Sammy? Right.
I think
I'm going to the post credits. I'm sorry.
Yeah. We'll get there. Now, before we get to the post credits, we also got to talk about Smoke and
yes,
taken out.
Oh my gosh! Now how we go back to the person who sold the mill to them.
Correct. Right. So anything else you want to talk about?
Get there? No, go ahead.
Okay. Now here's the part when I said to you, how in the world did this movie get made? How was this green?
Yes.
Smoke single-handedly taken out these Klansmen. Like they're coming back so they're back at the Juke joint. They probably heard what happened the night before, and now they're claiming the property again. Now that it belongs to them now.
Right. They had no intention because they didn't exchange a deed or transfer the ownership of the property. They just figured probably we're going to take the money, and then the next day we're going to take everything back from these two individuals.
But then Swoop was there and took them all out. He was mortally wounded, and right before he died, he saw a vision of Annie and his little baby. And he was breastfeeding the baby, and she passes the baby on to Smoke, and he says the same thing he said when he came to visit the baby. Great, Papa's here now. Yeah, and then he perishes, right? And then we go back to the next day with Sammy running into the church, and once again his pastor father says to him, turn away from your wicked ways, repent your sins,
right?
Drop the guitar. What does Sammy choose to do? Next scene, you see him driving and clutching what remained of that guitar
for dear life. That's right.
He made his choice, and just like the song said, "Dad, I lied to you. I love the blues."
Yep.
And then the story ended. And then talk about the post-credit scene.
You go ahead and lead.
Okay, so last moment of the movie. Where there were two post-credit scenes, but this one, the first one, is now taking place many years later.
Like the 1980s, right?
1992.
1992.
And Sammy is elderly. In his 80s now. But he's still playing the blues.
Still playing.
And the actor playing Sammy is legendary bluesman Buddy Guy. Right? So Buddy is there, and he goes back to his dressing room, and he gets a visit by Stack and Mary.
How about that?
And they're dressed in the 90s.
How about that with the hair and the big dookie earrings?
Yeah, got the cut, like a sort of cut. And Mary's dressed as,
like the salt and pepper of
the hair pulled back in a ponytail, on the sucking a lollipop. And Stack is trying to.
And Stack got the multi-finger ring.
Yes, right. Right. That covers all the fingers. And Stack is just trying to convince Sammy to choose immortality. Like, you can do this. You don't have to, you don't have to die. You can live forever. Just tell me. That's what you want. I can get that for you. I can do that for you. And then Sammy's response is, I think I've seen enough of this place. And then before they leave, he plays Traveling, which is the same song that he played for Stack. Stack heard him for the first time. Said, make some money. So he plays that song again. And then after he plays, Stack and Mary head out to the door. And Sammy says, maybe once a week I wake up paralyzed with women that night. But before the sun went down, I think it was the best day of my life. Was it like that for you? He's asking Stack. Stack says, no doubt about it. Last time I seen my brother. The last time I seen the sun, just for a few hours, he was free. Incredible. incredible moment. He still thinks of his brother.
How about that?
Last time he saw his brother, and the last time he saw his son.
And what's coming up for you with reading that? Because I'm looking at you, and it's
just loss. Like you really feel that and you don't have to be twins to feel loss of any family member,
right?
But just having that memory of that night, last time you saw smoke, and the last time you heard the music, the last time he saw his son, all happened in that one day. That's a moment that all of these, the three of them will never forget.
Right. So, and that binds them together.
Yeah. And it just hits me more whenever I see that scene. But it's a beautiful movie.
It is.
And the second, the post-credit scene, the other one was just having Sammy, so talented, just playing the guitar, but this was a truly incredible movie. And it's going to stay with me for a very long time. This movie is going to be talked about for the entire year until award season next year.
Absolutely, and rightfully so.
Yeah. So, as we wrap up, is there anything else you want to say? Any moments that we might have missed or covered?
I have a question for you. Yeah. Because Sammy's father brought this particular scripture up, so I'm going to read it out loud, and I have a question for you. So he brings up and asks Sammy to recite as he's preparing for his sermon. Says, I want you to read 1 Corinthians 10:13.
Yes. And he knew it by heart.
And he knew it by heart. Yeah. So it says, no temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. So, in light of that scripture, is there any observation? Because I know both of us, in terms of being of our particular denominations, religion, etc. What does that scripture say to you? Since that was a scripture that established the journey of which Sammy was going to go on, but even more so, I just wanted to read it to kind of acknowledge that. But the title of the movie is Sinners. Who are the sinners in this movie?
Well, of course we know we're all sinners. Sinners to me is, well, according to the movie, is if you love, if you're not giving your life to, if you believe in God, if you believe in Christ, if you're not giving your life, if you're giving your life to the Lord or whatever God you believe in, and you're truly spiritual and you're fully committed, you don't have time for the secular music. So to me, and if you do, find yourself leaning more towards secular than spiritual, you are considered a sinner. And I think that's what I'm getting out of this. Is that music is very powerful. We know how it transcends, and you see that in the film. But I think what we're the movie's trying to say, well, this music is, yes, the music, when we're, listening to gospel music or Christian music, yes, that is about the Lord. But let's not discount this music that we have over here that was created by these brilliant artists, over time, over years. This music still moves people. It's just as powerful as the hymns and the spiritual songs that you hear throughout your lifetime, if you're into that, and that the two can exist together. And it doesn't make you a sinner because you listen to secular music and turn away from the Christian music. But we know, like, bigger than that, sinners, we're all sinners. But that's not what the movie's about. I think the movie is about the music. what type of music you listen to, what 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 gets your heart more so. You know, what do you love the most? Um, it could be, you know, it's Christian music just as well as the blues music. Is what I'm trying to say. I think that's what sinners is. So to answer your question, who the sinners are, it's the ones who enjoy the music that conjures the spirits, and the ones that transcend and brings the past and the present together. Like, these are the sinners.
I can appreciate that. Like, it is giving a message around, rather than put as a kind of categorization of people. Like, if you listen to this music, you are this. If you're listening to that music, you are that. And then putting whatever positive or negative connotations on that you will. I didn't have a preset answer in asking you that question in terms of like, what do I think sinners? But in light of what you've been sharing, it makes me, the title of the movie makes me think like, you know, sin is on a continuum. You know, we're all sinners, if you will. And with that, you know, we still have redeemable qualities. Like Stack abandoning Mary was grounded in intentionality of protecting her. And that just really resonates with me, because even though he was out there being a gangster and he was also, both him and his brother were soldiers, et cetera, you know, one could say that he didn't act properly in terms of his love and respect for Mary, you know, getting together as a couple and staying together. But he also recognized the odds, and he knew that he would rather let go of something that he loves rather than allow harm to come to it and come to them. Annie, while not necessarily a practitioner of Christianity, and you know, there is out there in the ethos that if you aren't a particularly recognized institutionalized religion, you know, you're a sinner, etc. But clearly the evidence of her actions show that she has compassion and love and empathy for others, even to her own great sacrifice. Delta Slim, even though he's a drinker and therefore a sinner, if you will, was in many respects a kind of paternal to Sammy and to the brothers around, like, you know, and also a kind of a griot in terms of telling the story of his friend Rick. Like, he's demonstrating that kind of paternal spirit that kind of gives you advice and gives you guidance. And even with Smoke and Stack, like, you know, clearly the two of them, even with nicknames, Smoke and Stack, if you will, but also being big brothers to their little cousin and trying to kind of set him straight and give him guidance about, even when I think it was with Smoke that was telling him, don't become a musician. Go to, we didn't even talk about that. Go to Mound Cannon or Mount, I forgot the name, Mound Bayou. Go there, you know, an all free, all black city. Go there. Leave here. Don't go into music. You know, they weren't just so stuck in their ways of transgression, if you will, to the extent where they didn't have other people's best interests at heart. So I think it kind of like allowed us as sinners ourselves, if you will, in watching this movie, kind of playing back to us, like, you know, all of us fall short of the mark and all of us still have redeemable qualities regardless. Even Remmick. I mean, now that cat was evil from jump. He jumped on the scene, burning. Literally. You know, but even he could say, I have been transgressed against by others who took my father's land, you know, and who of our experiences has not had something taken away by others, if you will. So yeah, this was, I agree with you. Like, this is a movie that like still resonates with me, and I'm so glad. Like, I know we're talking about it, and this is the first time like we've like talk like in this forum. I'm just glad that I saw this movie with you. I'm glad that we're talking about it together. I'm just going to say, for the things that can't necessarily be discussed on camera, I am very glad to share a life with someone that I can see a movie like this with and see myself and see us, see our children. Like that opening scene when Sammy's going to his mom and getting in the wash water. Like that's me and Keith and me and Maceo all day, every day. To be able to see those pieces of our lives represented beautifully, affirmatively, even against an atrocious historical backdrop. It was beautiful to be able to see that movie with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, this I appreciate you. And I hope that we do more of these, talks, conversations. Doesn't necessarily have to be about movies or TV, but I see a future with the two of us, um, maybe doing some things to help them.
Yeah.
This could be our ministry. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy this time with you. You make me think, I'm trying to be as intelligent as possible.
The same here. The same here.
Be better prepared. But I really enjoy this. And I can't wait for us to get together and talk about something else.
The same here.
This is the type of movie where, we're going to see it, wait maybe 2-3 months and watch it again and find something else.
Yes.
I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that we didn't cover during our spoiler review. And if you have any comments or scenes or moments that were your favorite, you want to discuss it, let's do that.
Yeah.
You can put something in the YouTube chat, comments, or you can send us an email. So we are Fatherson Galaxy. Our email address is KEYard@fathersongalaxy.com. You can find us on X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube channel. So you'll be able to get in touch with us if you want to, right? And leave comments wherever you feel comfortable. We're also on audio platforms. We're on Apple and Spotify. Anywhere you get your podcasts, you'll be able to find us. So thank you so much, for joining us. This was wonderful. And I hope you get something out of this. And if you enjoy, our conversations together as husband and wife, let us know. And, we will absolutely be willing to do more of these conversations. Right? So anything you want to say before we close? Okay. All right. So thank you, everyone. Until next time, take care.
And we will see you again.